You can always tell what you believe by how you behave, because while beliefs maybe aren't like the only thing contributing to how we act, it's a pretty like
It's a big one.
it's a big one.
Yeah.
So you can tell what you believe by how you act. And so if you are acting in such a way that, to go back to the last episode, if you are acting in such a way that you are being controlling towards a spouse or your kids, then that is an indication that you have to some degree learned to believe that it is maybe your job, or even that you are able to control other people.
Right. Yeah.
That's going to lead into what we're talking about today. Because if you think that it's your job to control other people, if you think it's your job to control your kids, then one of the tools you're going to use in your effort to achieve that goal is anger.
Yeah.
So lie number 2
Dun, dun, dun.
that parents believe so often, and it's so easy. We've all done it
Oh, yeah. And still do.
and still do, even though we know.
Yeah.
But the lie is that anger is power.
Mm-hmm.
We want to have more power than our kids in the relationship
Yep.
because we want to control every outcome.
Right.
We don't want them to make mistakes or bad choices.
Mm-hmm.
And because we want to control the situation, control them and their behavior, we want to be more powerful. And we often end up, again, it's not something we're actively choosing to believe necessarily, but we act in such a way that it seems like we think that the more angry I am, the more power I have in the
Yeah.
relationship.
Right. The louder I am, the more intense, the bigger I make myself look, and the most I can squash you,
The scarier I can be.
the best outcome this will be. Yeah. It may be a temporary outcome that you wanted, like it gets your kid to stop doing it. But then,
So it can, on a short-term basis, like you said, it can produce results.
yeah,
But it's never actually true that anger is power.
right.
And it's actually the exact opposite, which is what makes this really interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Because if I assume that I have more power in my relationship with my kids by being angry, being scary, then I'm actually revealing that I am the least powerful person
Yeah.
in the relationship, because I've given all the power to my kids, because through their behavior, they are able to trigger my anger.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then I won't find myself being able to control my own behavior, my emotions. I
Right.
can't regulate my emotions.
Yep.
And so if my kids have the power to make me angry by acting a certain way, then if I don't want to act that way, the next best thing, if I can't control myself, is to try to control them.
Yeah. And so much of that is always rooted out of fear or embarrassment. Because, like, how often do you hear, like, oh, like parents say, like, oh, my kids were so embarrassing today, or they embarrassed me so much at the store. And, like, that, is a reality. There have been plenty of times where the kids have done something that I'm like, well, that wasn't my favorite. But then, like, anger only comes whenever, like you said, when you feel out of control, when you feel like you aren't getting what you want and you're afraid that you're losing that control. So it's just that like cycle of like that fear fuels the anger, causing you to react in such a way in order to control your kids or whoever it is around you. And then it's just like, and then when that doesn't work, that fuels even more fear because it's like, oh no, this isn't working. So maybe I just need to get louder. Maybe I need to get scarier. And then it just is like this really dangerous cycle that like you just keep getting meaner and meaner. And then you keep not seeing good results. And so that leads to just being a mutual feeling of fear that like as a parent, you're afraid of not being able to control your kids and get them to do what you want them to do. And then your kids are afraid of you because you've made yourself this big, mean, scary parent.
Yeah.
And so there's not respect there. There's only fear.
Yeah.
And it's not a fun place to be.
Yeah. And a lot of this stems from having just improper goals set up.
Yeah.
A lot of times in these dynamics, it's because the parent has decided that their goal with their kids is just to get them to be obedient or to be compliant.
Yeah.
And we have talked about this before, but if your goal in parenting is compliance, then you'll feel justified in using whatever tool
Yeah.
you can to achieve that goal.
Yep.
And typically that looks like fear and it looks like anger.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like control or manipulation.
Yeah.
And like you said before, that can produce results on a short-term basis.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite things I've ever heard anybody say, I've said it 1,000 times, I'm going to say it again. If you can get your kids to do what you want them to do because they're afraid of you, that on the outside may look like obedience,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not actually obedience. It's
Right.
survival.
Yeah.
So if your kids do what you want because they're afraid of you, they are surviving you
Mm-hmm.
and they're not actually obeying you,
Yeah.
because obedience is actually only the product of love.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a Bible verse for that. I think it's John 14:31. Jesus said, I do what the Father has commanded me so that the world may know that I love the Father.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes in these types of dynamics between parents and kids where there's anger and there's fear and manipulation and control from the
Mhm.
parent side to try to compel their kids into compliance, the message that's often received on the kid's side is that you'll love me if I obey.
Mm.
And if I don't obey, then you won't love me.
Yeah.
And that's the exact opposite message that Jesus was conveying,
Mm-hmm.
because he was saying there is love. And because there's love, there's obedience.
Yeah.
So obedience is actually the product of love. But when kids are taught that if I don't do exactly what my parents say, they'll be angry, they'll be
Mhm.
scary, they'll punish me,
Yep.
they'll threaten me. If that's the message that's received from the kid's side, it actually like inverts what Jesus was trying to convey,
Right. Yeah.
where obedience is meant to be the product of love. But as far as a lot of kids are concerned, love is the product of obedience.
Ooh, that's really good. Yeah. That like when they're obedient, that is how they earn
Yes.
love
Yep.
rather than I am loved.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I am loved and because I love my parent,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do these things. This is a product,
Yes.
not a formula to attain this thing.
Yes. And then obedience, it stops being the goal and it starts becoming just the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to switch your goal.
Yeah.
So obedience better serves us and our relationships with our kids when we let it be not the goal of our relationship with them, but just the product of our relationship with them.
Yes.